morning. So today I have Lou with us, who is the CEO and founder of the Adler Group, a consulting and training firm helping companies implement the win-win hiring programs where he uses his performance-based hiring system for finding exceptional talent. He has helped over many companies find exceptional talent for the companies to grow, and has around 40,000 recruiters and hiring managers, which have attended many of his wonderful workshops, which he has held over the last 20 years. Let's welcome Lou on 10 minutes of hiring wisdom, where he will tell us about his company, why he created such a company in the first place, and just learn from his experience. Hi, Lou. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Manal. How are you doing? I'm doing great. I look forward to chatting.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining us, Lou. I've read about you. I've read about your post on LinkedIn, and I am beyond excited to have you as a guest and learn from you. So, Lou, can you tell us about your company? Why specifically were you focused so much on hiring?
Well, that's a long story, but I'll give you the short one. Many, many years ago, before everyone listening to this was born, I became a recruiter. But before that, the 10 years before that, I was running a manufacturing company. And when I became a recruiter, it was pure random being aggravated with my boss, and I quit, became a recruiter. But I realized that hiring could be a business process, just like manufacturing parts or accounting or marketing or sales could be a business process. Most people in hiring don't see it that way. So that's what got me excited. I just realized if you do the same things and the right things time after time after time, you will generally get the right answer, which is hiring a great person for the right job for the long term. So that's the essence of my background in a nutshell.
Okay. And how was the transition like working at a manufacturing company and then establishing your own company specifically focused on hiring?
It was challenging, and there were many times I felt that was a stupid thing to do because I walked out on one day having 300 people working for me and running a company, and the next day being by myself in a little room making phone calls. So it was discomforting. But after a few weeks, I realized, hey, this could be appropriate. And when I learned how to do it, I realized, hey, there was something really significant about it. But there was a risk there up front. I will not deny that. And even after that, I thought twice, was this
Of
really the right
course.
thing to do? But
It worked out in the end. You're successful, as in, like, of course, everything does have its challenges, but as long as you know you're pursuing something that you're passionate about, is something that's important essentially at the end of the day, which you did, and you have a lot of people following you now because of the amazing advice that you give. So, specifically, when it comes to hiring, according to you, what are some challenges that companies face specifically in finding the right talent for their company?
well, let me give you a story because that would be really great. Just last week, I was up in Northern California in the agricultural district. But this one company I visited was looking for a project manager. Doesn't matter what the business was. And I was there with 5 or 6 people in the company, and not a huge company, but not tiny either. Uh, and they had a list of what they were looking for this project manager. Had like 20 things on it. 10 years of this, a background this kind of thing, experience in this, and understanding that. And I said, let's forget all of that for a minute. What does the person need to do to be successful? Assume the person started August 1st of 2021. And everyone here in this room on August 1st, 2022 realized they hired a great person. What would that person have done? And it took about 5 minutes. They said, oh, they're going to first move this technology that they have for crop planting from Israel and move it to the United States. I said, great. Well, I have to have enough experience to do that, but we can now dig into that job. I said, what are they going to do after that? And the guy said, and everyone agreed, oh, they've got to grow the business 10 times what it is today over the next 3 years. I said, fine, let's find people who can do that. So the answer to your question is most people don't define the job. They define a person doing the job. But once you define the job, then finding candidates who are motivated and competent to do that work is much easier. So clarifying expectations upfront, defining what success looks like over the course of a couple of years is the way to do it. As opposed to, and too many companies hire for the start date, which is what the compensation package, the title, the location, rather than if someone competent and motivated to do this work for the long term. defining the work is the key difference maker. If you don't do that, it's pure luck if you're going to hire the right person.
I love how you decided to work backwards specifically rather than focusing on, okay, these are 20 things that you would need in a person, but actually describing the job, which is something that's very important because I think I've spoken to a lot of recruiters in the past few weeks and they're like, okay, whenever people are writing job descriptions, they're expecting a unicorn when something like that doesn't even exist. So people need to be much more careful when they're actually curating the job description because that's something that's very important and it will help in attracting the right candidates. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I can definitely see why it is definitely very important and enlightening. So Lou, I'd love to hear any advice that you have for job seekers out there when it comes to applying for jobs in the job market.
So here's really the issue. And we have a program on it's winwinhiring.com. So if you go to winwinhiring.com, you'll see a course for candidates, excuse me, on how to prep for the interview. But the real thing that candidates need to do is to be insured or to ensure that they're being interviewed accurately. And most of the times it won't be. So the one thing a candidate can do is very early on in the interview is just say, hiring manager, recruiter, can you tell me a little bit about the job, what the expectations for this job are, what are some objectives for the job are, because I'd like to give you some examples of work that I've done that's most related. So you force the hiring manager to do what I did in that meeting is say, hey, tell me what the person needs to do. Well, if you're a candidate, say the same. What do you want this person to do to be successful? I'd like to then give you some stories or some examples of work that I've done most related to that. Now, you have to be prepared for that. You have to understand that. But that ensures that you're being interviewed properly by being asked questions that are meaningful, not ones that are biased or indirect, that are superficial or hypothetical. So that would, if you can own that piece of advice, you're going to increase your assessment accuracy by 50 to 100%.
I have a follow-up for that. So, for instance, if I ask that question, don't you think the recruiter would be like, okay, this person, didn't they read the job description? Why are they asking me? Because it could go
No,
both
the
ways,
recruiter is
right?
going to say,
So how would you
no, I
deal
would say
with
the
that?
recruiter, no, your job description is terrible. The job description doesn't say that. So that if they want to be a little more diplomatic, they could say, I'm looking at your job description. It seems to have just a bunch of skills and experience and generalities. Can you be a little bit more specific about some of the challenges or problems the person's going to face? I tend to take a very direct approach, but I wouldn't advise that to anybody else. But by being a little bit more diplomatic, but when you look at the job description, it never lists the performance objectives or some of the problems or challenges. So you could just ask, hey, could you clarify that job description in a little bit more detail? I'd like to give you some examples of work that make most sense.
Okay, sounds wonderful. So you've written books as well, Lou, and some of them are on the #1 top sellers on Amazon. And can you tell us a little more about your books? Because specifically, they're very related to this topic, and we'd love to hear some
Well,
short
sure.
insights regarding those.
Let me give you the quick summary. The fourth edition of Hire with Your Head will be published on September 22nd, 2021 by John Wiley and Sons. It's actually the fifth edition, but now is where candidates can be interested. I wanted to also write a book that was helping not only managers and interviewers, but also candidates. Wiley did not want to do that. So when they asked me about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago to come up with the original fourth edition, I said, no, I want to do it where I can give advice to candidates too. And they said, no. So I published another book through a different publisher called The Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired. And that was a very difficult book, but it's available on Amazon. Both of them are available on Amazon. The Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired and Hire with Your Head. In fact, you can pre-order the Hire with Your Head now. But the Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired not only describes what to do, but then it has the last 2 or 3 pages of each chapter says, hey, if a hiring manager doesn't do it or the recruiter doesn't, you do this. So it gives all the advice at every single step, how to apply for a job, how to be sure your interview is found, how to practice, how to prep, how to answer the right questions. But I end it with this comment. While all of these tips will help you get a better job or one that you deserve, they will not help you get a job you do not deserve. But it does take work to get a job. But you have to control the interview. You have to be prepared. And if you're good, If you're a good person, you will get the right kind of job. You even find the right job. And I'm going to say, do not apply to a job posting. There's a lot of tips in the books on do not apply. It's a 1% chance you'll even get interviewed. That's be a 3% chance you'll get interviewed, and it's a waste of time. Use the backdoor techniques in the Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired. And if you read just some of the comments, you'll discover you'll be able to find a job or a couple of interviews in a couple of weeks. So that's my thought for the day.
Okay. That sounds absolutely amazing. I will definitely check that book out, Lou, because it absolutely sounds amazing. And everyone loves shortcuts and actually knowing their way around the job market because it's stressful as it is. People would love to know and hear from people who are successful like you, who know the job industry when specifically applying for jobs. Well, Lou, our time is up. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing insights about your company, about your book, about and using examples, which helped us visualize and understand why and how important hiring can be, especially for the candidates and recruiters. So thank
Happy
you so
to do
much,
it.
Lou.
Thank
It
you
was
very
an
much,
absolute
Manal.
pleasure.